I've crawled through collapsed tunnels in Ukraine, scaled crumbling smokestacks in Detroit, and walked through the rusted-out skeleton of a Cold War radar station buried in the forests of Belarus. I've stepped inside a reactor control room in the exclusion zone of Chernobyl, stood there with a Geiger counter in one hand and my heart thudding like a war drum in my chest. Urban exploration has taken me to the forgotten edges of the world. And I'd go back to any of those places again, alone, at night, with a dying flashlight, before I ever set foot in the Paris catacombs again. There were 3 of us that night. Me, my best friend Louis, and Elodie, a local who claimed she knew a way into the forbidden sections of the catacombs, the parts not listed on any map, the ones closed off by bricked-up walls and laws that no one really bothers to enforce because no sane person goes looking for them. The official sections, the ones with lighting and Latin phrases carved neatly into arches, those are tourist attractions. Beautiful in a macabre way, but sanitized. What we were looking for wasn't in any brochure. We met Elodie at a quiet intersection in the 14th arrondissement, a couple blocks from the Denfert-Rochereau metro. It was just past midnight. The streets were empty, slick with rain, and the only sound was the rumble of the city's bones beneath us, the metro trains rolling by, deep below. I remember thinking it felt like we were standing on a sleeping creature's back. She didn't say much at first, just nodded, adjusted the heavy canvas pack on her back, and led us down an alley behind a shuttered bakery. The entrance was hidden behind a pile of busted furniture and trash bins, a narrow maintenance hatch set into the concrete, rusted around the edges, and locked with a chain that Elodie snapped open with practiced ease. "This goes deeper than the legal entrances," she said. "They won't follow if anything happens." I should have turned around then, but I didn't. Louis was already climbing in, headlamp flickering as he disappeared into the darkness. For the first 20 minutes, it was all tight crawl spaces and foul-smelling mud. We moved through shallow tunnels, slick with condensation, the walls pressing so close our packs scraped the ceiling. The air was heavy with mildew and rot, and the silence grew deeper with every step. Occasionally, we'd stop to catch our breath, and I'd hear the soft sound of water dripping somewhere far ahead, steady, patient, eternal. Then we dropped into a larger chamber, and the catacombs swallowed us whole. The walls were made of bones, stacked femurs, skulls, and broken vertebrae, all arranged in precise patterns like macabre brickwork. It was strangely beautiful, in a horrifying kind of way. The air felt still, not stale, not cold, just still, like it wasn't meant to be disturbed. Louis grinned and spun around in the middle of the chamber, his boots crunching gravel. "Now this," he said, "this is a proper explore." He was always chasing the next high. We'd explored together since we were 17. Old Soviet tunnels outside Riga, a submerged chemical plant in the Netherlands, a decommissioned missile silo in Montana. The more forbidden it was, the more he wanted in. And somehow, we always made it back. Until now. Elodie lit a lantern, not an electric one, but an old brass oil lamp with a flickering flame. The orange glow danced across the skulls, throwing shadows that moved too slowly for comfort. "Flashlights mess with the current down here," she said. "Trust me." I didn't know what she meant, but I didn't argue. We moved deeper. The corridors branched and twisted like veins. Some were wide enough to walk side by side, others forced us into a single line, ducking low to avoid ceiling beams crusted with age. The bones followed us, sometimes stacked neatly, other times scattered along the floor, like something had tried to rearrange them and failed. At one point, we passed a section where the wall had collapsed. Behind it, in the darkness, I could see what looked like carvings, not of names or dates, but shapes. Spirals, jagged stars, runes that hurt my head if I looked at them too long. I stopped to take a photo, but Elodie grabbed my arm. "No," she said sharply. "Don't take anything from here, not even pictures." Louis rolled his eyes, but didn't argue. We walked in silence for a while. My boots made wet sucking sounds with each step. The air felt heavier. I checked my phone's compass, but the needle spun slowly, never settling on a direction. It had been working when we entered. "Old mines," Elodie said, noticing. "Iron deposits mess with compasses. It's normal." But I didn't believe that. We reached a chamber that didn't look like the rest. No bones, no carvings, just bare limestone walls, dark and wet, like the stone itself was sweating. At the far end stood a blackened stone wall, melted almost, like something had burned through it and then re-solidified. In the middle was a faded symbol, circular, with jagged intersecting lines, uneven and crude. "This wasn't here last time," Elodie whispered. Louis stepped closer and ran his fingers along the rock. "Looks like someone took a blowtorch to it." "I've never seen this symbol before," she said. "It's not on any of the old charts." Then we heard it. A whisper, low and crackling, like someone speaking through broken teeth, just beyond a melted wall. Louis froze. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. Sounded like... He held up his hand to silence me. The whisper came again, fainter this time but clearer, like someone saying a word underwater. Elodie turned pale. She pulled the lantern closer and moved fast, ducking into a narrow tunnel beside the chamber. "We need to keep moving. Now!" We didn't argue. That was the moment I first knew we'd made a mistake. A deep, instinctual certainty that we'd crossed into a place we weren't meant to find, and something had noticed. We followed her into the tunnel. It narrowed quickly, forcing us to crawl on hands and knees. I could hear my own breath rasping in my ears, and every now and then a faint shuff-shuff of movement behind us, just beyond the light. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a long corridor. No bones here either, just smooth, wet stone and the smell of mold and earth. We passed more symbols, drawn in chalk, scratched into walls, or etched with something sharper than stone. Louis filmed everything, of course. He always filmed everything. But when he checked the footage later, none of it was there. Just static, glitches, moments where his voice would distort and repeat itself, or the image would jitter like an old VHS tape melting in the sun. Somewhere along the way, we passed through an old archway, crumbled at the top, almost hidden in shadow. Above it, another symbol, the same one as before. I stepped under it. And something shifted. The air changed. The sound changed. I felt a pressure in my ears, like I'd climbed a mountain too fast. And then a pop, sharp, like a light bulb breaking. Louis gasped and stumbled forward, clutching his head. "You feel that?" he said. "Jesus, it's like someone shoved ice in my skull." But Elodie just nodded, like she expected. I turned around to look at the arch. It was gone. Behind us was solid rock. No tunnel, no doorway, just a flat wall where we'd walked seconds ago. "Tell me this is a joke," Louis said, voice rising. Elodie didn't answer. We were lost. No, worse, we were somewhere else. We tried retracing our steps, of course. We scanned every inch of the wall, checking for cracks or seams, but there was nothing. Just cold stone and the stink of wet earth. Louis started swearing under his breath, pacing back and forth, his camera forgotten. I watched as Elodie backed away from the wall and sat down, pulling something small from her pack, a silver pendant on a frayed cord. She kissed it and tucked it beneath her shirt. "What is that?" I asked. She looked up. Her eyes had the haunted, glassy look of someone watching smoke rise from a house they used to live in. A charm. It's old. Breton, I think. A gift from another explorer. He went deeper than this and came back wrong. Wrong? She didn't answer. Louis lit a cigarette with shaking hands. The ember glowed in the darkness, a single point of light in a place that felt utterly starless. "We need to keep moving," Elodie said, standing again. "There are other ways out, but we have to find the old gallery." So we walked. We passed rooms where the walls bent inward, warped like heat rippled the stone. Others were so silent it felt like we'd stepped into a vacuum. At one point, we entered a shaft filled with strange artifacts, broken dolls, rusted tools, bits of wire twisted into nooses. They hung from the ceiling like wind chimes, spinning slowly in air that didn't move. I stepped close to a doll. Its face was missing. In its place was a stitched leather patch, with a sewn-on grin that stretched too wide. Something about the craftsmanship made my stomach knot. Louis didn't even look. He was recording again, holding the camera up to his face like it was a barrier. I think he needed it to stay sane. Then we found the well. It sat in the center of a wide circular chamber, cut from black stone that didn't match the surrounding limestone. There was no bucket, no pulley, just a hole, deep and dark. The air above it was colder than the rest of the room, and when I knelt to look down, I heard something move far below, like stones shifting, or bones. "Don't speak near it," Elodie said suddenly. Her voice cracked. "Don't say names near it." I backed away. That's when we found the graffiti. Bright red, fresh, still wet in places. Someone had been here recently. The tags were in French, mostly warnings. "Ne descendez pas." Do not go down. "Il ne dort pas." He does not sleep. And one, scrawled across the far wall in English. "It knows you're here." Louis laughed. "Now we're in a horror movie." Elodie slapped his cigarette from his mouth. "Shut up. Stop mocking it." That's when the whisper came again. Clearer this time. It didn't echo off the walls. It sounded like it came from inside my ears. "Don't look," it said. I spun around. Nothing there. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Louis nodded slowly. "It said—" "I know what it said," I snapped. Elodie was already moving again. "We're close to the old gallery. That's where we'll find the way back." I don't know how long we walked. My sense of time had fractured. There was no sunrise, no stars, just the soft scrape of boots on stone and the echo of our own breath. Once, I saw movement at the edge of my light, a shape, hunched and quick, darting around a corner ahead of us. I froze. Louis saw it too. He didn't say a word, just turned the camera off. We found a mural eventually, huge, spanning the length of a curving tunnel. It looked ancient, painted in blood-red pigment that pulsed under the lantern's glow. It showed a figure, tall, elongated, with limbs like tree branches and a head that was wrong, too round, too smooth, featureless. Around it were humans, twisted in agony, not dying, changing. Their mouths were open like they were screaming, but their eyes were peaceful. Beneath the mural, more text. Scrawled in charcoal, the one beneath became many. The many became hungry. Louis backed away slowly, breathing hard. "What the hell is this?" I looked at Elodie. Her face had gone completely pale. "You said you'd been here before," I said. "I've been near this section," she replied. "Not past the melted wall. No one goes past it." "Then why did you bring us here?" Louis snapped. "I didn't," she shouted. "I told you that wall wasn't there last time. This place changes. It grows." That's when we heard the breathing. Heavy, slow, rhythmic, not ours. Louis spun in a circle. "Where is it?" Elodie dropped the lantern. The flame didn't go out. It grew. The shadows it cast stretched unnaturally long, and in their wake something moved, an outline against the far tunnel wall. Too tall, too thin, arms like tendrils. We ran. I didn't think, I just ran. Through corridors I didn't recognize, across a flooded tunnel where I nearly lost a boot, down a staircase slick with slime. Behind us, the breathing followed, sometimes close, sometimes distant. Never hurried. Like it was enjoying the chase. Eventually, we tumbled into a space that looked more familiar, an ossuary room with skulls neatly stacked. The normal catacombs. The tourist part. "How?" Louis gasped. "How are we back?" Elodie didn't answer. She was staring back into the tunnel we'd come from, her face blank. We didn't stop. We climbed, retraced our path, followed half-remembered turns, until we reached the maintenance hatch where we'd entered. It was still open. We climbed out into the wet Paris night, gasping for air like we'd been drowning. And that should have been the end. But that was 6 days ago. Louis hasn't spoken since. He just watches the door. Every night, he sets up salt lines and cameras and doesn't sleep. Elodie disappeared 2 days ago. Her apartment was empty. No sign of a struggle. Her phone was left behind, still playing a recording of that whisper on loop. And me? Every time I close my eyes, I see the mural, that figure, those changing faces, and I feel a weight on my chest, like something is trying to pull me back down. They say the catacombs are over 200 miles long, but no one's ever mapped them all. Some tunnels were never carved by human hands, and some doors don't open. They wake. We should have never split up. That's the first thing I regret. After Elodie vanished, Louis wouldn't leave his apartment. I visited 3 times in the next 2 days. Each time, I found him more withdrawn, more skeletal, his eyes hollow and ringed in gray. He was surrounded by monitors, old CRTs, newer flat screens, even a portable VHS player. Everyone played footage from our catacombs trip, looped endlessly. He kept rewinding a specific frame, a flicker of something behind me in the corridor with the red graffiti. "Look," he whispered. "Watch it again." I did. There was a smear of motion, something long, almost serpentine, peeling back around a corner faster than the eye could track. Louis insisted it wasn't a compression artifact. "It's real," he said. "It followed us back." That night, I dreamed of stone corridors and that featureless face. I woke to find dirt under my nails. I hadn't left my bed. 3 days after Elodie's disappearance, Louis called me at 3:17 a.m. No greeting, no panic in his voice, just resolve. I found a way back down, not the same entrance. We missed something. I told him not to go. I told him we needed more people, backup, maybe even the authorities. He laughed, hollow, joyless. "They won't believe us, but I'll get proof." Then the line went dead. I didn't sleep after that. I pored through maps, read old catacombs records, even scoured obscure forums we used to haunt in our urban exploring days. Most were dead now. Old blog posts from 2010, abandoned subreddits. But one name came up again and again. Le Noord, the knot. An unmapped intersection, a convergence point beneath the city, rumored to twist space. Explorers who passed through it spoke of corridors repeating themselves, loops in time, voices that weren't echoes. It matched what we'd seen. I messaged an old contact, Renard, a veteran of the Paris underground. He'd helped us once before with a decommissioned Cold War radar station in Brittany. We'd climbed through rusted hatches into vast domes where moss-covered Soviet listening equipment still wired to silent speakers. Renard was a skeptic then, always grounded. Now? His response was curt. If he's in Lenowood, he's already gone. Don't go back. I ignored him. I went back. Not through the same hatch as before. It had been welded shut by authorities after a tourist group got lost and panicked. This time, I entered through an old service tunnel behind an abandoned boiler facility near Montparnasse, a place Elodie once mentioned in passing. The metal gate had been ripped open. Inside, the air was cold and stale, tinged with iron. I descended alone, flashlight and backup batteries in my bag. I wore a body cam, partly for safety, partly for my own sanity. The descent felt faster this time. I passed through rooms I didn't recognize, ones lined with crumbling mosaics, stairs that slanted impossibly sideways, and once, a corridor that ended in a mirror bolted into the stone. I looked into it. The reflection was wrong. Behind me, instead of the corridor I had walked through, there was only black. And standing in that blackness was a silhouette, tall, unmoving, head tilted in observation. No face. I didn't look again. I kept going. Eventually, I reached familiar territory, the ossuary room from our escape. The stacks of skulls remained undisturbed. The stone still bore my initials from years ago when we first came down, young and reckless. And then I found Louis's bag. It lay open beside one of the older tunnels, partially buried in bone dust. His flashlight was crushed, lens shattered. The camera was missing. There was no blood. I called out. The echo returned like a whisper. Come back. It wasn't my voice. I pressed deeper, unsure why, unsure if it was bravery or madness. The next chamber was one I'd never seen before. It resembled a cathedral, massive pillars of skulls and femurs arching toward a ceiling lost in shadow. A pool of black water mirrored the room in eerie stillness. The air here felt heavier, harder to breathe. And at the far end, I saw him. Louis knelt by the water, back turned, unmoving. I called to him. He didn't respond. I stepped closer, carefully, boots crunching soft bone. Louis? He turned, slowly. It wasn't him. His face was pale, stretched too thin, like it had been molded in clay. His eyes were voids, reflective but flat. His mouth hung open wider than it should have. Something beneath his skin moved. It stood. Not Louis. A mockery. It mimicked his motions, but backwards, like a puppet filmed in reverse. I ran. Back through corridors that shifted as I moved. Walls seemed to lean closer. Tunnels opened and closed where none existed before. The light dimmed, though my batteries were full. My body cam flickered, then died completely. I passed the well again, the one Elodie warned about. This time, something had climbed from it. Scratch marks in the stone, like claws, trailed away in multiple directions. I don't remember climbing out. But I woke up on the street above, soaked in dirt and blood that wasn't mine. My body cam was missing. My clothes were torn. The skin on my back bore a symbol in bruises, something circular, with branching lines. I'm still not sure how it got there. The next day, I received a package, no return address. Inside was a single mini-DV tape, the kind Louis used, written in red marker on the cassette. It's waking up. I haven't watched it. Not yet. But I hear whispering in my apartment now, in the corners, where the light doesn't reach. And the mirrors, I've covered them all. Because sometimes I catch glimpses, not of myself, but of corridors, of motion behind me, and that figure, always watching, always closer. The catacombs never let you go. They just let you think you left. I tried to forget. I really did. For weeks after that last descent, I shut everything out. I left Paris, went north, rented a quiet room above a bakery in Lille, and told no one where I was. I stopped checking my messages. I didn't open my laptop. I didn't watch the tape. But the dreams followed me. Corridors. That endless echo. Bones shifting just out of view. Reflections that didn't match. Faces that moved when mine didn't. And behind it all, that figure. That impossibly tall thing with no face, no sound, only presence, like the weight of 100 stones on your chest. Then came the knock. It was late. Maybe 2 a.m. I hadn't spoken to anyone in days. 3 knocks. Steady. Soft. I didn't answer. I stared at the door, heart racing, until the sun rose and the world returned to color. Whoever it was, if it was a person, left no footprints. No sign. But on the door, smeared in something dark and flaking, was a single symbol. The one from my back. A circle with lines branching outward, like a fractured eye. I moved again the next day. It didn't matter. The symbol followed. It showed up scratched into condensation on mirrors, scrawled onto receipts from shops I hadn't entered. I found it once traced into flour on the bakery counter, though I hadn't touched it. And worse, I started seeing people. Or maybe they weren't people. They looked normal at first. Strangers on the metro, a man at a cafe, a woman behind me in a queue. But they stared too long, didn't blink, smiled too wide. And sometimes their reflections lagged behind. I sent the tape to Renard. I had no intention of watching it myself, but I needed answers. His reply was swift. Whatever's on here, it's not just video, it's a key. Don't play it. Burn it. I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. 2 days later, Renard was found dead in his apartment. They said it was a stroke, but his face had frozen mid-scream. The authorities wouldn't let me see the body. A closed casket funeral followed. No one questioned it. That night, I watched the tape. Not because I wanted to, but because I felt compelled to, like something pulling me toward it, like it was already too late. I connected my old camcorder to a dusty TV and slid the tape in. Static. Then, a corridor, one I didn't recognize. Bones lined the walls, but they were different. Twisted. Too long. The footage jittered, as if the camera was shaking in unseen hands. Then a face filled the screen. Elodie. Her mouth moved, but the audio was warped, backwards, slowed. I could just barely make it out when I reversed the footage. Don't follow the lights. The tape ended abruptly. Just black. Not static. Not digital dead space. True, endless black. My apartment lights flickered off. I didn't move. Then I heard it again. Scraping. From behind the walls. Soft. Dragging. Like something pulling itself across stone. I left the apartment that night. Fled to a friend's place in Rotterdam. I hadn't seen him since we explored an abandoned Soviet munitions facility in Poland years ago. Huge echoing corridors of decaying steel, miles of underground train lines, rotting crates of ammunition, and entire rooms swallowed by fungus. He believed me. Or at least, he believed I believed. He let me stay, but the sounds didn't stop. The whispers crept into my ears at night. They started saying names. Mine, Elodie's, Louis', Renard's, and then new ones. Hundreds of names. Spoken too fast, layered over each other, a cascade of voices like drowning in a crowd. One night, my friend confronted me. "You brought something here," he said, eyes wild. "It's not just in your head. I heard it too. The walls, they breathe." He kicked me out. I don't blame him. I returned to Paris, back to the one place I hoped might give me real answers. The municipal archive. Deep beneath the city, there are records few know about. old maps, sealed architectural plans, blueprints never digitized. With some fast-talking and old connections, I got in. There I found a blueprint dated 1792, labeled Riso Inconu, Unknown Network. It charted part of the catacombs that didn't exist on any modern map. A node marked dead center bore a hand-drawn emblem. The symbol, the knot. In the margins, a note. Zone d'interference. Temps et espace instables. Ne pas entrer. Zone of interference. Time and space unstable. Do not enter. It wasn't just an urban myth. Someone knew. For centuries, people knew. And they tried to bury it. I photocopied the map, took pictures, burned the rest. It didn't stop anything. Now, the reflections have stopped mimicking me. They move on their own. Now, doorways in my apartment appear where none existed before. Now, I can't sleep without waking up with dirt under my fingernails, or with a whisper in my ear. You went too deep. You opened it. I don't know what's coming next, but I feel it growing. It's not just in the catacombs anymore. It's spreading, and it's wearing our faces. I had no intention of going back, but something inside me, like a thread wound too tightly, began to pull. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It wasn't guilt. It was something colder, like gravity. I kept telling myself I needed closure, answers. But deep down, I think I knew. I was already marked, already chosen. All roads, all tunnels, all dead ends led back to that place. And I wasn't the only one who felt it. Lewis called me. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't slept in days. They won't stop whispering, he said. The walls, the drains, even the trees outside my window. They all say the same thing. What thing? I asked. A pause. Then, go back. Go back. Go back. Louis met me 2 nights later, outside an old access tunnel off Rue Henri Barbusse, completely sealed off decades ago, but we knew a way in. The air stank of mold and rusted iron, like old blood. He looked worse than I remembered. Skin pale, eyes sunken, fingers twitching at random. We descended together. Neither of us spoke. The tunnel opened into familiar territory, the lower levels, the forbidden zones. We passed familiar graffiti, the remnants of past raves, old shrines made of bones. We passed the corridor where we lost Elodie. Louis wouldn't look at it. I did. It was empty now. Just shadows and silence. But I could swear I heard her laugh echo faintly, as if from miles below. We kept going. Deeper. Eventually, we reached it. The door. You don't understand. It wasn't there before. We'd been to this depth once, maybe twice. We'd seen the hall, the curve, the split in the wall. But this wasn't a split. It was a door. Huge. Black. Not made of stone, not of metal. Something older. Polished. Almost oily. And the symbol was etched across it, pulsing faintly with light that had no source. Louis was shaking. I dream of this, he whispered. Every night. For weeks. He stepped forward. I didn't stop him. His fingers brushed the surface. The light surged. The stone beneath our feet trembled. And the door began to open. Not with hinges, but like it was folding in on itself. Space collapsing inward. Inside, I wish I could forget. There was a chamber, massive, wider than any known part of the catacombs. The walls moved. Not metaphorically, they breathed. Veins throbbed beneath translucent surfaces. Columns of bone spiraled upward into nothing. And in the center a pit, a hole that went down forever, not just dark, empty. The kind of void that made your mind stutter, that made time slow, a void that whispered. Louis collapsed. He clutched his head, screaming. Blood poured from his ears. I grabbed him, tried to drag him back, but he clawed at me, wild-eyed, screaming one word, "Elodie!" I turned. She was standing at the edge of the pit. Or something that looked like her. Same clothes, same smile. But her eyes, they were wrong. Too wide. Too many. I blinked, and there were more of her. Not clones, not reflections. Variants, hundreds, thousands. Some burned, some decayed, some with no face at all. They surrounded the pit. They looked at me, and in one voice they said, "You brought him." The next moments are a blur. I ran. I don't remember how I got out. I don't know how many hours passed, but I awoke back at the surface, covered in dust and blood. Alone. Louis didn't make it. Or maybe he never left. I don't know how to explain this, but I've seen him. In reflections. In passing trains. In the crowds at crosswalks. He's always just out of reach. Always watching. Back in my apartment, I found something new. On my table. A bone. Polished. Clean. Fresh. It wasn't there before. It was shaped like a key. That night, I had a dream. The pit. The chamber. But this time, I stood at its edge. A voice, thousands of voices, spoke from the dark. One of you must stay. One of you must become the guide. One of you must open the rest. I woke up screaming. The bone was gone. But the symbol had returned, this time etched into the flesh of my forearm, as if burned in by unseen hands during sleep. It's still there. I don't know what happens next. But I think the door didn't open for us. I think it opened through us. I couldn't sleep. After the mark appeared on my arm, something changed. Not just mentally. I mean, physically. My dreams weren't dreams anymore. They were places, real places. I could feel the damp stone beneath my feet, smell the rot in the air, hear distant chanting echoing through endless tunnels. Each time I woke, more dust covered my floor. Black dust, like soot from a fire that never burned. I started recording everything. The dreams, the changes, the static in my electronics. My phone screen would flicker, pulse, go dark whenever I passed a mirror. Sometimes, just sometimes, I'd see her behind me. Not Elodie, as I remembered her. Not human. Something that wore her skin like clothing, hung her smile like a mask. Louis still hadn't resurfaced. Neither had his body. I filed a missing persons report, but the officer's eyes glazed over as soon as I mentioned the catacombs. It was like the word triggered some internal amnesia. They scribbled a note and told me to go home. That was it. I started getting messages from other explorers, not just locals, international names, urban spelunkers, crypt crawlers, tunnel rats, people who had been in deep zones of cities like Odessa, Naples, Rome, Edinburgh. They were seeing the symbol, too, on walls, on ceilings, in dreams. A few even had it on themselves, carved into skin they hadn't touched. One man from Ukraine sent me a voice message. "I saw the hole too," he said. "It connects, beneath everything, not just Paris. It's like the earth is hollow, but not physically, spiritually. Something old dug through it, something that sleeps. And now it's waking." Then he screamed. The message cut off. His account was deleted 2 hours later. I traced his last known location to an abandoned Soviet-era bunker outside of Kiev. I recognized it. I'd been there years ago, exploring radar arrays and radiation shelters. Everything had been abandoned. Now, that same symbol was scrawled across the blast door in blood-red paint. I wasn't crazy. This was real. It had spread. One night, my laptop turned on by itself. Static. Then video. Grainy footage. It was from a GoPro I hadn't seen in years, mounted on Elodie's chest during one of our earliest expeditions. I watched as the footage played. Descending a staircase deep beneath the Paris metro. turning right at the collapsed masonry, crawling through narrow gaps, ducking into what we called the Whispering Vault. Then, silence. And suddenly, the video turned black, but the audio kept rolling. Click, step, step, breath, something wet. Then her voice, whispering, not lost, waiting. We don't die down here. We remember. You're the last one, Mark. I yanked the laptop shut, but it kept playing. No power. No lights. Still, the audio poured from it like an open wound. I threw it off my balcony. It landed in the alley, shattered. The sound didn't stop. I moved out that night, back to Louis's old place. It was sealed by police, but I still had a key. His apartment smelled like mildew and rotting meat. Not fresh, not old. Timeless. I found his journals. Scrawled handwriting. Pages filled with spirals, with the symbol. And one entry, circled over and over again in red ink. They're not ghosts. They're roots. We're the leaves. They're the tree. There was a map, too, but not of the catacombs. A world map. Dozens of points marked: Moscow, Cape Town, San Francisco, Tokyo, Reykjavik, and more. All connected by a thin red thread that looped and curved and intersected like veins. At the center of the web, Paris. And beneath it, written in a different pen. We built our cities on the grave of something ancient. We thought they were catacombs. They were containment. Now they're arteries. That night, I did something stupid. I went back down. I told myself I was only going to the first level, to check the entrance. But my legs carried me deeper, down past the carved skulls, past the party rooms, past the wall of bones where tourists stop. I passed familiar names etched in old stone: Ilara, Lazar, Delphine, Mark, mine. It was already there. I stopped. My flashlight flickered, died. Then, light, soft, blue, flickering, like underwater. But I wasn't underwater. I was in the heart of the stone. And ahead of me, standing in the light, were people. Dozens of them. Faces I recognized. Lost explorers. Dead friends. People missing for years. They weren't decomposed. They weren't even aged. They stood like statues, eyes wide open, unmoving, frozen mid-step, as if caught between moments, between life and something else. A hand touched my shoulder. Louis. He smiled. Lips cracked, dry, face hollow. But he smiled. I told you, he whispered. Told me what? I said. He looked up, and so did I. Above us, where the ceiling should be, was an eye. Not human, not beast. Something. Beyond. Wide as a cathedral. Blinking slowly. Watching through the crust of the world. And Louis said, "We're not in the catacombs. We're in its memory." Then I was alone, back in my apartment. But the dust was gone. My walls were sweating, and the sound of dripping echoed from places no pipes should reach. I stopped leaving the apartment. It wasn't fear, exactly. More like obligation. Like something wanted me to stay still, like a magnet pulling iron. I'd try the door, hand on the knob, and then something would whisper just behind my ear, "Not yet." Sometimes it sounded like Elodie. Other times like Louis. Once, I swear it sounded like me. I barely ate, I barely slept. But the walls fed me memories. Every shadow became a door, every sound a message. The catacombs weren't underground anymore. They were here, bleeding up into my space. Tunnels in the grain of my wooden floorboards. Carved skulls hidden in the paint swirls on my ceiling. I started scratching at the walls. Under the plaster, I found stone. Real stone. As if my apartment had been built around something ancient. I wasn't in the city anymore, not really. My phone rang. It shouldn't have. Service hadn't worked for days. But it rang, with a contact I hadn't seen since 2019. Delta Echo, Greece. It was from an exploration I'd done in a derelict NATO listening post outside Thessaloniki. We'd found weird carvings back then. Spirals, eye symbols, chalk lines in a language no one recognized. At the time, we chalked it up to old Cold War psyops. Now I knew better. I answered. Static. Then, you saw it, didn't you? I didn't speak. The voice continued, strained, hushed. It's not Paris. It's everywhere. We thought the tunnels were made by man, but we built them inside of it, like worms in a corpse. What do you want from me? I asked. It's not me, it's waking, and you've been marked. The line cut off. My phone melted. Literally. The screen bubbled, popped. The battery hissed and oozed onto my desk. I should have run, but I didn't. I went back down. This time I took a thermal camera. I wanted proof, something physical, something I could show the others, whoever was left. I entered through the same maintenance tunnel beneath the city park, past the manhole, through the wet, stinking underlayer. The moment I stepped in, the air changed, warm, almost humid, but with no airflow, like breathing in breath that wasn't yours. I turned on the thermal cam. Everything was cold, normal, except the bones. They glowed, not brightly, faint, residual heat, but impossible. They were hundreds of years old. They should have been ambient at best, but they burned like coals under ash. The deeper I went, the more they pulsed, in time with my heartbeat. I made it to the junction chamber, a large domed area called the chapel by explorers. It's where Elodie had vanished, where the hole had opened. It was still there, not a literal hole, not anymore, a space hanging in the air, like the idea of a hole made real, blacker than black. Reality bent around it, and voices poured from it. Mark, come see. We're home. The camera glitched. I flipped to night vision and saw them, dozens of them, figures, not skeletons, not corpses, living in a way, or at least moving, crawling along the walls, merging with stone, becoming it. Faces stretched, eyes blank, mouths open in silent screams or prayers. They saw me. They turned, in unison. And then the whisper, "You are the door." I ran. Through tunnels that shifted, pathways rearranged. I tripped on a wet skull, face first into the bones of a long-dead monk. I felt something wrap around my ankle. Fleshless, but warm. It pulled. I kicked, screamed, tore free and scrambled through the gap in the wall. Then everything changed. I wasn't in the catacombs anymore. I was in a corridor of white stone, lit from below by faint red light. Smooth walls, no carvings, just a long, sloping descent. I don't remember walking there. It was like I was meant to arrive. Ahead, a figure stood waiting. It was Elodie, but not her. She looked the same hoodie, same cargo pants, but her eyes were black pits, her skin translucent, pulsing faintly with lines like capillaries. She smiled. "You brought the key." "What key?" I asked, shaking. She pointed to my chest. I looked down. The symbol, the spiral, was carved into my skin. Not ink, not paint. Deep, fresh, bleeding. "Open it," she said. I backed away. "No," I muttered. "This isn't real." She raised her hand. Behind her, the wall opened, like skin splitting, revealing a vast chamber beyond. I saw structures, pillars, arches, and what looked like an altar made of spine bones. Above it, suspended in air, was a heart. Beating. Not metaphorically, literally. Enormous, veined, black and wet and pulsing. It beat slowly, shaking dust from the ceiling. The whisper became a chant. All around me, voices in a language I didn't know, but understood. The world was borrowed. The roots are reclaiming. He who walks the tunnels shall awaken the heart. I collapsed. Everything turned red. Then, silence. I woke in my apartment again, but it was no longer mine. The furniture was fossilized. My walls were stone. Dust 2 inches thick blanketed everything. The city outside my window was dark. No lights, no sounds, no people. Only one thing moved, a spiral, slowly spinning in the sky like a storm made of darkness. And I remembered her voice. "You are the door." And the door had been opened. I don't know how much time passed. It might have been hours, or centuries. The world I returned to was not the one I left. Everything was quiet, wrong. The buildings of Paris were intact, but hollow, like stage sets or paper shells. No lights, no life, just stillness. No internet, no power. My devices were either dead or displayed corrupted static, symbols or looping footage of places I hadn't filmed. One showed a corridor of bone pillars stretching for miles. Another, a face. Mine, staring back. Only the eyes were gone. Hollow. Smiling. I tried to leave. I made it 5 blocks before the street started bending. Literally, turning into themselves. Curving like a Mobius strip. Alleys would dead end into the sky. Doors opened into places they shouldn't. The city was folding in or out. I couldn't tell which. And beneath it all, a heartbeat. Faint. Steady. Like a drum echoing from beneath the cobblestones. Boom! 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 The catacombs weren't below anymore. They were everywhere. They'd risen. Or reality had sunk. I wasn't sure. That was the beginning of the overlapping. I gave up trying to find food. I didn't feel hunger anymore. Only pull. My hands began shaking. Skin flaked. The symbol on my chest had begun to glow faintly in the dark, like embers under flesh. Something had gotten in. Not a creature. Not a parasite. An idea. Like a root threading through my mind, blooming in the dark places. I remembered every tunnel, every symbol. I knew paths that had never been mapped, could draw chambers that didn't exist on any physical plane, except they did now. I could feel them. Like they were mine. One night, or day, it was impossible to tell anymore. I felt it call me again. The same tunnel, same path. I didn't fight this time. The catacombs welcomed me, like an old friend. I passed the bones, the doorways. The whispers no longer frightened me. They sang, words of belonging, of destiny. The spiral was no longer something external. It had taken root inside. And then I saw them, the others, explorers. Dead? Maybe, but moving. Some still wore their headlamps, now long gone dim. Some crawled, others walked. All were marked. The spiral on their skin glowing faintly. One of them was Louis. He turned toward me, mouth torn at the corners from screaming or smiling, maybe both. His eyes were gone. Just black pits. But he saw me. He knew me. He nodded once, then stepped aside. The passage behind him opened into the massive stone corridor from before. The white stone, the red light, the altar of bones, and the heart. Only now, it wasn't suspended. It had grown, merged with the chamber. Its arteries were tunnels, its valves doors. It pulsed through the structure like a God-made machine. And I realized it was Paris. Not metaphorically, literally. The catacombs weren't beneath the city. The city had grown around the catacombs, like a scab over an open wound. We had built monuments and museums atop something ancient, thinking it was dead. It wasn't. We had fed it, with noise, with electricity, with blood. The explorations, the parties underground, The ceremonies, the deaths. They weren't anomalies. They were nourishment. The spiral whispered in my mind, "You are the seed. You are the root. Let us grow." I took my place at the altar. The chamber rumbled, walls cracked. From the stone, figures emerged, not men, not beasts. Shapes that defied physics, carved from memory, born of madness. They watched, judged, accepted. And then the city screamed. Above, buildings collapsed inward. Streets opened like mouths. Lights blinked in Morse, spelling words no one alive could read anymore. And from the ashes, it bloomed. Not a plant, not a fungus. A mind, alien, vast, beyond time. Built not from neurons, but from architecture, from death, from history, and bone and belief. I was its voice, the final explorer, the first priest. I'm not writing this to warn you. It's too late for that. I'm writing this so when you feel the pull, when you feel that itch to go underground, to explore, to uncover forbidden places, you'll understand. It's not curiosity. It's not thrill. It's calling you. Because the catacombs were never just tunnels. They are veins. And Paris was just the first heart. More will awaken. They already are. Welcome below.